Thank you so much, and sure appreciate everyone still being here and this morning. And just start by saying I served 28 years in the military. I retired from the Arizona National Guard as a Major General, and I'm a physician and human factors engineer and an inventor. And what excited me most about this panel is that these women represent very different levels and experiences of not only diversity, but disadvantaged opportunities, and they have been able to sustain their programs. And just a small vignette I'd like to share. As a teacher, which I've spent much of my career in academia and in the military, I had one student who I was teaching a Homeland Security class to as the Homeland Security Director for New Mexico. I said, okay, now the big challenge problem for you all here is if we have an extreme drought in California and a Hoover Dam bursts and there's no water to be found for your community, what are you going to do about it? And we had all these solutions, high-tech solutions. Well, one young girl stood up in the group and she said to me, watermelons. She said, Dr. Sobel, it's all about watermelons. We grow watermelons all the time. We can hydrate our whole community with watermelons. And it just hit me how that very different perspective from someone who lived in a rural community who had very little education, she came up with a solution to a problem that a lot of adults had never even thought about. And she had what it takes and has what it takes to become an inventor. And since that time, she has become one. So a lot of times in the military, for veterans, it's all about the mission. They come from a very rigid environment. They're not used to innovating until it comes to time of war, because that's a time that the standard solutions don't always work. And they have to figure out on the fly, so to speak, how to invent their way around a problem to make it a success for the mission. So I'd like each of these ladies to talk about a little bit their programs and how they sustain their programs in a very diverse population and engage students and keep them in these programs despite all the challenges these kids might have. So please, let's go ahead and start. Anna, please, you're the first one on our list.
All right, so I'm Anna Leese Escobar, and so I'm an SSTM for the Navy in cryogenic electronics, and I have a lab of about 20, mostly PhDs, some masters, and we have students coming through. I think that we call them patent fests in the last talk, because many people talked about that. So definitely try to keep the culture of innovation alive for sure. And I think that doing that from my perspective, it's really about this idea of giving people intellectual safety, that they can say their crazy ideas and they feel really comfortable with that. So we try to infuse that throughout the group all the time. I think our biggest challenge is funding. We've talked about that. We have a lot of patents, but we don't have a lot of transitions. We have a few. We call them in the military transitions. So we have a couple, but sort of most of our patents are waiting for this big break. And getting through the valley of death is a big challenge for us, just like for everyone else. But I think in terms of sustaining and opening our hearts to diversity, we just practice that mostly literally by creating this environment of intellectual safety. That's my thoughts.
Yeah. And Sheila, you're an academic, very senior at Mizzou, and also an inventor. Tell us a little bit about what Mizzou is doing.
Yeah, so it's a very good, challenging problem that we have, because we want to encourage our university faculty to innovate. But we know that they may not have a lot of bandwidth. We know that they run into P&T issues and really just the know-how. We're trained as academics to do basic science, do basic research. We can teach and train our graduate students. But how do we translate that research? How do we get it from bench to the market? So one of the things that we do have at Mizzou, we're very fortunate to be one of the recipients of an NIH REACH grant. and that's really research and commercialization hubs. We're one of 8 hubs in the United States. Our hub basically is the only hub that encompasses really 6 states and 14 universities. So what we do is essentially reach out to faculty, to inventors. We help de-risk their technology. We put them through a commercialization boot camp where, again, they further learn how to de-risk their technology, looking at customer discovery, product to market analysis. We teach them how to pitch. And then at the end of this 6-week boot camp, they pitch. They pitch to an external group of advisors. And through some other processes, we will award 5 to 6 groups with up to $200,000 to do proof of concept studies. So as a university, we want to encourage that, encourage faculty to apply, but we just don't want to throw it out in the universe. What we do is that we do a personalized approach. We go out and seek the inventors. We don't expect the inventors to come to us. Now, we do issue LOIs and so forth, but that doesn't always get the minorities. That does not get the women. So we want to personalize that by asking them to join us, by helping them demystify the process of innovation, answering their questions. So we want to accommodate them, not have them accommodate us. And because of that approach that we take, we are increasing the number of women and minority inventors into our program. But like Anna was saying, you know, it is a money thing too. Like I said, we're very fortunate to have this NIH Reach hub that allows us to do proof of concept funding to attract more women and minorities into the program. We also have a Barter Drive accelerator too at Mizzou that helps us innovate and provide funding for our faculty.
Great, thank you. So as a kid, I grew up, I was a nerd. I still am. So, but I heard the term museum and I'm thinking, oh, this sounds really boring. So how do you get these kids engaged and their parents as well?
Yeah. Actually, I think it's quite the opposite. I'm Stephanie Bales. I'm the president and CEO of the Cade Museum for Creativity and Invention. We are located in Gainesville, Florida. And the genesis of the Cade came out of Dr. Robert Cade. He was the lead inventor of Gatorade. And so we use his invention story as kind of our guide star for how we, what we call spread an inventive mindset in our community and beyond. So the mission of the Cade Museum is to transform communities through inspiring and equipping future inventors, entrepreneurs, and visionaries. And I know most of the conversations we've had today and yesterday have focused on, you know, individuals who are in graduate school and beyond, but we're focused on trying to get those earliest minds engaged and involved, curious, wanting to aspire to be something, to be an inventor, an entrepreneur, and a visionary. And what that means is it means infusing a culture in a community. It means that we develop several programs, one of which is called the Cade Prize for Innovation, which identifies pre-seed stage ideas that are coming out of R1 universities. Through that Cade Prize for Innovation, all of those applicants come in with their great ideas, and we take those great ideas and we transform them into informal science education and K through 12 curriculum. And we take those really great ideas with cutting edge technologies and we make them fun. And we first test them in our 27,000 square foot museum, which is in Gainesville, Florida. And we use that museum as our R&D lab. And we say we're a mission with a museum because that museum is where these things catalyze and they become fun instead of boring. And then once we take this education that comes from the brilliant ideas of people like you in this room, then we take that into areas of the community that wouldn't normally have access. So we work very closely with HUD developments. We also work with underrepresented populations and such to help give them a sense of personal agency, help give them access, give them opportunity so that one day they can be you, one day they can come into your programs and they can succeed and they can thrive because they've developed that they've given themselves permission to be an inventor.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
That's huge.
great, great. And Linda, you're doing some really special work at ASU and your innovation center there. Tell us a little bit about not only how it got started, but what are the sustaining capabilities you have that keep kids and adults coming back?
Absolutely. Thank you. My name is Linda Ricchiuti. I'm the Senior Director for the Orin Edson Entrepreneurship and Innovation Institute at Arizona State University. It's a mouthful. We go by Edson E&I. That I can remember. I parallel so much with what these other ladies on the stage are talking about. We have to address kind of some larger issues. We're the largest research institution. And so ASU has its own energy, right? It has its own passion, its own way of doing things. Entrepreneurship is absolutely at every level of that university. It's not just something we write down or talk about. It is what we live and breathe there, and it's an expectation of what we do. So the J.R.N. Edson Entrepreneurship Institute it's named and endowed, and we have a guide star as well. J.R.N. Edson is a local Arizona entrepreneur, Bayliner yachts. I think you've probably heard of those boats a few times. And basically what he did is he had to make a decision. Was he going to be an entrepreneur, or was he going to go to college and be in school? He really didn't want people to have to make that decision. He wanted it to be combined in a way that one supported the other and it makes sense to do. So we're very diverse and inclusive, but the inclusivity piece is what's key. You can have diversity at a university, but it can become representation. You hire for diversity, you have a good representation across the board, but what you don't have is inclusion. How do you make the culture through access points? And that's really what we strive to do. We have multiple pathways in. We don't look at entrepreneurship or innovation as a linear process. It is very organic. And so what we have is we've created pathways and access points across multiple points, starting with middle school and high school students. We have a deep partnership with Verizon, and Verizon's Innovative Learning Labs is something that our team inside of our institute builds curriculum for. So everything we build is around entrepreneurial ideas, the mindset, the passion, all of those pieces that connect students to big, messy, complex problems that we've talked about. How do you get kids to understand that they have the power to do that? That being an entrepreneur doesn't mean owning a business, and it's not brick and mortar. It's a mindset, it's an approach. It's how you engage in problems every single day and what you do with that information and how you iterate and change and you fail forward and you do all the things that we talk about. And I'm really excited to hear about so many other people doing parallel work in this area. We have for the Entrepreneurship Institute, we also have a venture development program, seed funding. We have pitch competitions. We have all of those pieces. We have an NSF I-Corps that really does very similar. We look into our university for our students and faculty, and they find things in the lab that can transcend out. How do we help wrap around them all the tools that they need, all the inspiration, all the understanding of being an entrepreneur so they can transfer that knowledge out? And then how we keep them in the process. We also have, student engagement, which is huge for us. We have a massive student population, online and in person. So how do we help build pathways for those students who just have an idea? We had 2 students that were freshman students win the Global Red Bull Challenge. Literally, they were sitting in their dorm room saying, I wish we could take notes differently. Wouldn't it be cool if we could write it this way? Went to a faculty member, and because ASU is immersed across the board in entrepreneurship, that faculty member teed them all up with all the things they needed. So we have design studios. We have all those pieces that now connect. So those students' idea became a reality, and now they're launched and ready to go.
Very good. So how do we de-risk this whole process of risky business of inventing when a lot of these families, maybe this is their first shot? They're poor. They maybe have some language challenges. There are cultural barriers. How do we de-risk this whole environment? You mentioned making it fun, but that's difficult.
Well, it is creating a culture. I mean, we find a lot of children that participate in our programming, they first have to feel as if they belong. So there are different strategies we use. First, we partner with trusted institutions in certain communities so that we're not coming in as a new individual or a new organization, and we're developing relationships through other organizations. But it's creating a culture, it's creating trust. And then when you have those things, you can have shared language. That's another important component so that everyone can be on the same page when they're communicating. I mean, there's just a wide variety of factors to create that foundation. Then that gives them the sense of personal agency to want to contribute, to want to participate in this ecosystem.
Yeah, that's great. So, and do any of the other panelists have a response to that in terms of
I do. I've been
mentoring?
thinking about this a bit and so what's been coming up for me and sort of getting really resonated throughout the conference is that this idea of culture is just really paramount, and thinking about what can we do about that and what does it mean, the culture of innovation. And I think for me, the thing, looking back on my life and being grateful for the way I was brought up, is this idea of having wonder in the world. And I think that I don't know because I'm not from a population like that, but I imagine in challenged populations that you might not have time for that. And so I think that as a community and as the public, we should step up and value and teach wonder as something that has, value forever after. The other thing is this idea of the permission to fail, permission to practice, someone had said. And I love that was the first time I'd heard it as it's not really failure, it's practice. And I think that unlocking that is really another key. And then finally, the other idea that's really been resonating for me throughout the conference in the last few weeks is I really believe that diversity does bring better solutions. I mean, it's the way nature does it, and it's mathematically provable if you pay attention. So I think that teaching that as well will give empowerment to those that feel like they're the one, and that they are just automatically bringing their own perspective is going to create better solutions. I think that's a lovely message to kind of somehow find a way to infuse into our education system from a very young age.
Very nice. So I'd like to open it up if there are any questions from the audience, if anyone does. Otherwise, I'll continue to facilitate. One question I do have, having come from a military background, we're used to problems that are bounded. And now you're, particularly for veterans who are transitioning into civilian life, now all of a sudden there are many unknowns. And particularly when it comes to inventing a response or to a challenge, how do you solve it? So how do you teach that type of thing? Because it's something that's the circuitry in the brain knows how to do that, but how do you teach it?
Yeah, it's interesting because we have a venture vet program through our venture development team. And honestly, it's about leveraging the pieces that are like muscle memory for those vets. They understand certain things at a level that we can't comprehend. So how do you wrap around those people all the resources they need to be successful? What does that look like when you're working with someone? We've had several vets that have successfully transitioned, but then like with every entrepreneur, and I'm an entrepreneur, you get that slump, right? How do you make it past that? How do you stay innovative? How do you stay creative? And those are the pieces that we do with mentorship. We have a deep group of mentors that reach out actively and keep hold of those people so that we can help bring them along and cross all the different bridges that they come to, but really leveraging those pieces that are important to them, and that's their strength. It's their superpower.
Yeah, and at the University of Missouri, we have a veterans boot camp too. That's in person, but as well as virtual. So we get people from across the country, and the person who runs it is actually a Gulf War veteran. So he understands some of the trials and tribulations our vets have in transitioning. And this boot camp basically gives them and empowers them to be creative, to de-risk and understand, how can I form a business? What are some of the challenges? What do I need to do? And so forth. So I think just giving them the tools to succeed and having someone who's directing that understands some of the barriers that they may have is critical to help the veterans.
So FNAI has created a wonderful network of fellow senior members, other inventors. How can we leverage that for some of these programs as we move forward?
Yeah, we have a deep mentorship list, a group of people that are our go-tos. We would love to expand that, particularly in invention. That's slightly different than entrepreneurship. It's really, how do we help guide when someone at one of our faculty members discovers something, invents something, they don't know if they want to be an entrepreneur. or if they want to stay in the inventor track. That's step one. How do we have those conversations? So having experienced inventors in the room, we have lots of entrepreneurs, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's nice to have people who are really streamlined in that invention mode. So we would love to connect.
So at the Cade, really, we start with invention, but then we tell the story about how invention doesn't make an impact until it makes it into the public square. And for that to happen, it requires a team. It requires entrepreneurs. It requires funders, attorneys, et cetera. But how I see NAI fitting, for example, at the Cade, we have what I mentioned was the Cade Prize for Innovation. And most often, these applicants are the young innovators in the labs at these R1 universities. And it would be incredible to have a group of inventors that are seasoned as you are, as mentors for these young up-and-coming individuals. I think that would be a nice complementary arc to their efforts.
Great.
I think I've been thinking that we have amazing rock star inventors here. And I think that we can use that, put a little glitz on it and send them out and have them talking to underserved populations about how they invented Beyond Meat and how they came up with that. And that's something that, they may have seen in Target or whatever. So really connecting the dots between where they are, which may feel so far away from that, to, what happens when it all connects. So I think that would be fun.
So, and what is the link? I've heard lectures on knowledge-based economy. Rob Duncan has given them, others have given them. What is that link, and how can we impart that information to young people who are just learning about finances and knowledge and the economic impact of inventions? How can we educate them?
I'll just start. You have to start early.
Yes.
And again, young children have to realize that there are dreams to be had beyond being a YouTube star or, social media expert. And those are one of the things that we are truly facing. This is what we see our second graders, our third graders who come into our programs. You ask them at the beginning of our program, what would you like to be? It's a sports star or a YouTuber. And what we try to do is change that perspective, help them create an inventive mindset. And it's great to survey them at the end and have their world open up to possibility. And I wanted to start because I think we do have to change the culture for these young minds so that when they come up and they come out, they are coming to you ready to take that next leap.
And that's a good point, though. I love the fact that little kids are so inventive and so creative. But as they go through the school system, what do? We pound that out of them, color within the lines. So either a right answer or a wrong answer. So some of the things that we've been doing at Mizzou is introducing creativity activities in our engineering classes. So we challenge them to walk across the room, now find a different way to walk across that room, and then over and over again, using something different each time. So we start these creative juices instead of pounding it out of them by coloring within the lines or X equals Y.
Yeah, so we have less than 2 minutes left. I'd like to ask each of you, what is your mission at this point in your career? As an inventor, as an innovator, as someone who has a wealth of experience you can share? Whoever. You're the toughest job.
Well, yeah. So my first job out of college, I was a sociology major, and my first job out of college was doing crisis intervention for abused children. So I was the first one called,
That's rough.
at 2:00 in the morning when a child presented at the hospital. And I did that for 1.5 years and realized that my heart was too soft for the front lines, but I knew I wanted to make a difference. And so I spent the next 20 years working in international organizations, companies, all of them were startups, gaining management skills. So one day I could come back and lead a nonprofit that had a mission to make an impact globally. And that's what the Cade Museum is doing. We want to spread an inventive mindset around the world. And we believe that's important because the challenges that we're all facing requires people who can imagine, who can create, who can invent. And so that's my mission, is to help this organization grow and partner with organizations like this to make an impact for the future.
Anyone else? Sheila?
My mission is to help our faculty, staff, and students at the University of Missouri innovate.
Yeah, super.
My mission is to bring to life this technology that I've been spending my whole career on, which is still waiting in the wings a little bit, but which I really believe is gonna create like the next generation of efficiency and awesomeness in technology. So I work in all the ways I can find within the construct that I find myself in to kind of bring that to life, whether it's through helping people, patenting, pushing programs forward, whatever.
Yeah, super.
I think my mission still has always been to create as many access points as possible for as many humans to enjoy the power of being an entrepreneur and an inventor. I think there's nothing more powerful about knowing you can solve messy, complex problems and you can make the world better for everyone.
Yep.
So by opening as many doors as possible.
Yeah. So to circle back again, thank you, all of you, for sharing your passion when it comes to inventing and to making this world a better place. And please thank our panelists.